Cat Days by Griffin Rose on AO3. Episode 39, Chapter 9, Kimino. Tokoyami had imagined what being kidnapped would be like before. He imagined how he'd fight back, or how he'd escape. With Dark Shadow, there was almost no way for them to properly lock him up. And as he grew older and stronger, more confident in his fighting abilities, he was pretty sure he would take any kidnapper on in a straight-up fight to break out. He hadn't imagined completely missing his kidnapping. One second, he was searching the forest for Midoriya. The next, he was in some kind of bar surrounded by the League. To say he was confused was an understatement. Twice in Toga, he'd learned their names later, pounced on him immediately, and strapped him on a chair. After losing control of Dark Shadow so thoroughly, he wasn't ready to call upon his Quirk yet to properly fight back. He'd have plenty of chances later, so he'd just bide his time. "Sorry about all this," Shigaraki said. "Just a precaution while you adjust." Tokoyami wasn't sure if that required a response. He played it safe and kept quiet. Shigaraki wasn't discouraged. "You weren't the player we had in mind, but you were impressive in the sports festival." "He has quite the dark side," Compress said. He took out Moonfish in one hit, as well as one of his own comrades. His stomach dropped. He had taken out Midoriya then. Was his classmate okay? Or would his demise be a weight Tokoyami had to carry for the rest of his life? How long that might be, considering this situation. Dark Shadow hummed under his skin, responding to his emotion and begging to be released. Tokoyami shoved it down. He'll deal with Dark Shadow and what it had done to Midoriya later. "Is that so? Maybe you do belong with us after all," Shigaraki said. He scratched at his neck. "Quirks can be so hard to control, and the NPCs never understand." Why did this guy relate everything to video games? Tokoyami knew he was unhinged, but he was starting to become straight up concerned about this guy. "You understand though, don't you?" Shigaraki asked, tilting his head. "You know what it's like to have a quirk no one understands? To be pushed down and suppressed by society while they mold you into what they want." Tokoyami had no fucking idea what this guy was talking about anymore. Agreeing seemed like the best way to keep Shigaraki happy. And if Shigaraki was happy, Tokoyami wasn't getting hurt. But agreeing might also open up conversations Tokoyami didn't want to have. "You don't have to be what they tell you to be," Shigaraki said. "You can join us and show them what we're really capable of." Join them. Was he serious? They kidnapped him and were asking him to join them? His lower beak dropped just enough to show his disbelief. Usually, he did really well hiding his emotions, since most people weren't used to trying to read his face. But something about it was obvious even to people who he'd never met before, like now. "Perhaps we should give our guests time to acclimate first," Kirigiri suggested. Right. He only just got here. He probably still processing." Shigaraki waved a hand and retreated. "You can give me an answer later." Oh, no, he was serious. "Does this mean we get to play now?" Toga asked, bouncing on a bar stool she was perched on. "No," Dobby stated. Toga pouted, but twice jumped in and distracted her. The two of them walked out the door. That seemed to be the big trigger. Tokoyami wasn't left alone, per se. There was always someone in the room, but they ignored him for the most part. Compress bought him a water bottle with a straw, and later a protein shake. Shigaraki disappeared at one point. Something about a doctor appointment, and he was gone for hours. The rest of the league relaxed in absence, asking Tokoyami harmless questions about what kind of shows he liked to watch and the music he listened to. He was surprised and delighted to find out Dobby listened to some of the bands he did, and then spent hours going over their favorite songs and the lyrics. Toga got bored with that, though, and demanded Tokoyami's attention. He ended up playing an intense game of I Spy with her, which most of the league then joined in out of boredom. When Shigaraki finally returned from the doctor's appointment, he was grouchy and irritable. He told Tokoyami he'll deal with him later, and then retreated into his own room. Tokoyami was back to waiting. Dark Shadow thrilled in the back of his mind, as it would take was a thought, and he could be out of restraints. The problem was, even if he freed himself, he had nowhere to go. Kirigiri or Compress were always watching him, and they'd easily recapture him if he tried to escape. No, it was better to wait for the perfect moment, when he could be sure he'd even make it out the door. Even better if he could hold out until the pros found him. They had to be looking for him. How long could it take, really? The answer was too long. He knew at least a day had passed, judging by how often Compress fed him. It was hard to sleep tied up on a chair like this, though, and even if he was a chronic insomniac, he still got some sleep most nights. The poor rest left his nerves frayed, and his mind walked on a razor's edge of control with Dark Shadow. The only bright side in this banquet of darkness was that the villains didn't seem to want to hurt him. Being tied to the chair was uncomfortable, but as long as Tsukuyomi behaved, they tried to accommodate him as much as possible. He was allowed to use the bathroom by himself, though. Someone stood on the other side of the door, and his anger spiked every time he came back and willingly let them put the restraints back on. Restraints that were clearly meant for someone else, he noted. They were stone gauntlets, and that did nothing but weight Tokoyami's hands down. But he could imagine his classmates in this place, unable to explode anything through the heavy rock. They stopped using those on Tokoyami after the first night. It wasn't like it would stop Dark Shadow if Tokoyami truly wished to unleash chaos on all of them. The rest of the restraints still crossed over from his body, remaining him at all times, that these villains might be acting friendly, but they could charge at any moment. He had to be careful, especially when Shigaraki finally came back in a good mood, fiddling with the TV and going on about a press conference. A press conference? Shouta repeated in disbelief. He was back in Masatafu with Izuku, but they weren't quite home yet. Izuku had been admitted to his normal doctor, and Shouta was dealing with business in the waiting room while his son was taken care of. We have 2 targets we're going to attack at the same time tonight, Tsukachi said. He was one of the few people on this conference call. Nezu, the confining little rat, was another. The public is demanding answers about what happened, and I see no reason not to give them something while using it to our own advantage. We won't be entirely truthful about the state of the investigation, but we could do another in a few days after the raid are over and explain. This would be something that the little rat would come up with. But why me? Wouldn't I be more useful on the raids? He hated the media. He dismantled the entire journalism industry if he could, and everyone who knew him personally knew that about him. It has to be you for a few reasons. The foremost being, you are a staff member at the camp during the attack. It would be more suspicious not to have you there, and might catch on to, the fact that it's a logical ruse, as you like to say, Nezu said. Besides that, we know you're worried about your son. If you were going on the raid, you'll have to leave him now to get ready, and you probably wouldn't see him again until tomorrow at the earliest. The Pren's conference will be in Masatafu, and you'll be gone 2 hours. 3 tops. Sakachi said. While Shouta couldn't give less of a damn about Nezu's reasoning, Sakachi brought up a solid point. He would have preferred being the man in the shadows, striking the raid team while the league thought they were safe after the showy press conference, but he also had to think about the kid. Both kids, actually. Hitoshi needed him too. If this was the best way to help Tokoyami, then fine. He'll be the flashy decoy tonight. There were a few more details to be hashed out, and Hisashi and Hitoshi arrived while he was finishing up. He accepted the bear hug from Hisashi and opened his arms up to encourage Hitoshi to come over to him. Hitoshi was still trying to find his footing in their little family, but judging by the amount of strength he held on Shouta with, that wouldn't be a problem for long. How was Izuku doing? Hisashi asked. Hitoshi pulled back, putting a respectable distance between them, and still looked at him expectantly for answers. He's been asleep mostly, which is for the best at the moment, Shouta said. In terms of injuries, the list made Shouta want to throw up. It's not great. Hitoshi frowned. How long is he stuck like this? And that was the million-dollar question. It's going to depend on how quickly the healing quirks here work on him. There weren't any miraculous cure like Recovery Girl for animals. One of the vets could speed up the healing process, but Izuku was still looking at a week or two before he could morph again. After he morphed, Recovery Girl could do her thing. Until then, it looked like they were going to have a cheetah in the apartment. Izuku had never been happier to go home before. He was drowsy and sluggish from all the meds and the side effects of the healing quirks, and getting into the apartment had been exhausting. They got so many looks from their neighbors. There wasn't a safe way for Shouta or Hisashi to carry him like this, so he had to stumble his way through the halls. He was on enough meds he didn't feel the pain, but it was also enough meds he couldn't walk a straight line. Hisashi and Hitoshi had rearranged the living room already, pushing the couch to the side and stripping the cushions to make a nest on the floor with every spare blanket in the place. A dozen of Izuku's stuffed animals were also present, and he happily sank into them, nuzzling his face into the stuffed Eraserhead plushie. He mostly slept the rest of the day away, waking up to eat dinner, and then later, when Shouta walked out the door in a business suit. He made a questioning whine, prompting Hisashi to come over and comfort him. It's all right. He's going to a press conference. He'll be back before you know it. A press conference? Hisashi rubbed his head. I'll be putting it on to watch. Don't worry. It made Izuku feel a little better. Hisashi even made it into a kind of movie night, making popcorn for him and Hitoshi, and building a fort around Izuku. Izuku was sprawled out on most of their prime fort building blankets, so it wasn't up to their usual standards, but Hisashi made do. Izuku couldn't eat the popcorn right now, either, and he didn't really have the appetite for it besides. Hisashi made the mandatory jokes about Shouta being dressed up and clean-shaved, which led to detailing some of Shota's less than acceptable looks over the years to Hitoshi. No, really. He went to one of Izuku's parent-teacher conference wearing hot pink sweatpants and an ugly Christmas sweater in April. He also hadn't showered or shaved in a week. The greasy hair and patchy stubble had really sold the whole look. So much so that this particular teacher actually called child services and concerned. It had all worked out, obviously, once Shouta explained he was busy working a case and had Hisashi to rely on, not to mention personally knowing most of the local CPS agents. Which still funny to think about now that it was over. Oh my god, Hitoshi murmured. Why does he even own pink sweatpants? I gave them to him as a joke since he always wears black. Hisashi admitted. He wears them to spite me. Oh my god, Hitoshi said again. He had the look of someone whose entire worldview was just flipped on its head. The conference distracted them after that. Shouta answered the questions as patiently as he could, but it was obvious their prodding was starting to piss him off. This training camp was supposed to be secret. Do you have any idea how the villains knew where it was? A reporter asked. We're still looking into that matter, Shouta said, but rest assured the leak will be dealt with. Is it true there's a traitor working in UA? Khan took that question, his arm shifting just slightly in a way that meant he had to grab Shota's wrist to stop him from lashing out. As this is an ongoing investigation, we're going to decline further comment on that subject. Another reporter jumped on the opening. Do you have any idea why Fujiri Tokoyami was kidnapped? Izuku whined, despite himself. They told him Tokoyami was taken, and over a dozen others had been hospitalized, but between the haze of the last day, he hadn't fully processed what any of that meant. Hisashi stroked his back, fingers skimming over his fur. The villains did not design to tell us their plan during the attack, unfortunately. Shouta bit out. We're doing everything we can to recover Tokoyami swiftly and safely. How soon do you think you'll be able to rescue him? We'll move in as soon as we know where he is. Do you think the League of Villains plan to harm Tokoyami? Are you worried about Tokoyami joining them? Tokoyami has every intention of becoming a hero, Shouta insisted. He wouldn't join them so easily. He didn't answer the question about harm being done to him, Izuku noticed. Another reporter jumped up, throwing their hands in the air to catch everyone's attention. Are the rumors true that the winner of the first-year sports festival, Katsuki Bakugo, was actually the League's real objective in the attack? We have the confirmation that Bakugo was a target that night. Shouta agreed. If Bakugo had been kidnapped, would you worry he'd join the League based on his behavior at the sports festival? Izuku could see Shota's temper snap. His eyes flashed in the camera, and his hair twitched in a long breeze. Not even Khan could stop him from rising to his feet. Seeing as how Bakugo wasn't kidnapped, this question is irrelevant and a waste of time. But I'll answer it anyways, because Bakugo would never become a villain. He might have a quick temper, but he's more determined than anyone else to be a hero. Now, does anyone have any relevant questions, or are we done? The media was not that easy to quell, and Khan draped Shouta back into his seat, while new questions were asked. Nezu filed the next few, giving Shouta a chance to calm down. I feel like a quick temper is putting it mildly, Hitoshi commented, glancing at Izuku. Hisashi chuckled. He's an explosive one, that's for sure, but if he truly wouldn't make it as a hero, Shouta wouldn't have kicked him out by now. Shota's got a good instinct about that. He started training you, right? Hitoshi pulled his knees to his chest. Yeah, I guess. You might not like Bakugo personally, and that's okay. You won't like every hero you meet. That's unrealistic. But he'll be someone you can trust with your life by the time he graduates. Izuku thought back to his final exam, seriously doubting that. Maybe anyone else could, but unless Bakugo's shaped up, Izuku doubted he'll ever willingly work with him. If you say so, Hitoshi said, clearly just as doubtful as Izuku. The conference lasted another few minutes, wrapping up with some questions about what UA was doing going forward and what they were planning to make it up for all the students' families. Once the conference finished, they left the TV on and let the news run in the background. That was a lot more depressing than I thought it'd be, Hitoshi said. They actually don't have any leagues to find Tokoyami, do they? Is that what you took from that? Hisashi asked. Izuku craned his neck to look at him. Hitoshi's mouth dropped open. You mean? This conference was highly publicized all day. The League attacked on the camp to make a statement. They're going to want to see their handiwork. You mean you expected them to watch? Hisashi nodded. They'll be watching, and hopefully they'll assume what you just did, which means they'll be entirely unprepared for the surprise attack about to just happen. Izuku cried out, and Hitoshi demanded. They're rescuing Tokoyami right now? He was very glad he had a brother to ask all these important questions for him. He had been furious not to be able to get any answers while he was like this. They're going to try, Hisashi said. Izuku hoped that they were able to do it. He hoped Tokoyami was okay, and 2 days with the League hadn't hurt him too badly. When will we know how it ends? Hitoshi asked. If they get Tokoyami safely, they'll let Shouta know pretty quickly. He'll pass it on to us as soon as he's able to, so it shouldn't take more than an hour or two if everything goes right. Not soon, Hitoshi asked quietly. Raids like this didn't take nearly as much time as movies made it seem. So, as a civilian, it was hard to have an accurate guess for these kinds of things. Most fights were measured in seconds, not minutes, unless both fighters were extremely powerful. And even though the League was powerful, the heroes would have the element of surprise. Hisashi explained a little more about how raids typically went. just filling the quiet while they waited for the news. He was interrupted by the newscaster on the TV, their hands flying up to their earpiece and the image cutting out, only to be replaced by an apocalyptic nightmare scene. This just in, a massive explosion in Kimino Ward has leveled 2 city blocks. Several pro heroes have been injured and... Wait, who's that? Is that a villain? In the destruction stood a singular man in a business suit and some kind of mask. The cameras were too far away to get a good look, but they didn't miss the arrival of the League and Tokoyami. Tokoyami didn't look hurt, at least, so Izuku could thank the universe for that small miracle. That's the missing UA student, isn't it? One of the anchors asked. It has to be. That's the League of Villains. Izuku could hardly breathe. Shigaraki strode towards Tokoyami, and Tokoyami backed up defensively, dark shadow rousing to his shoulder. A yellow and blue blur shot in front of the camera, and they lost the image for a moment as the helicopter camera was struggled and regained its balance. When it refocused, All Might stood in the middle of everything, facing off against the man in the mask. Holy shit, Hitoshi said. This isn't gonna end well, Hisashi murmured. Izuku made a questioning, keying sound. All Might was there, so everything would be fine, wouldn't it? No one could be All Might. Except, as the fight went on, All Might looked like he was struggling. Part of it was because he had to hold back while Tokoyami was still there. The other part of it was because this masked man was just that powerful. The surprises didn't end there, though. There was some kind of flashbang, and when the lights cleared, there was a wall of ice between Tokoyami and the League. The League runned furiously at their eyes, and someone dragged Tokoyami into a pile of rubble. As soon as Tokoyami was out of sight, a series of bright mini-explosions made the rubble collapse behind them. What the hell just happened? Hitoshi asked. Izuku could explain some of it. The ice had Todoroki written all over it, and if Izuku had a guess, he'd say the explosions were Bakugo. The flash grenades could be Yarirozu's work. Tokoyami mentioned her using them in their final, so she knew how to make them. Why were his classmates there? None of them had any reason to be in Kumino Ward. You just potentially saw some of your classmates getting expelled as soon as Shouta gets a hold of them. Hisashi said. He said it cheerfully, but Izuku picked up on the subtle notes of anger and concern hidden under his words. Classmates? Hitoshi repeated. At least Todoroki and Bakugo. Looked like one or two more, too. Classmates. Hitoshi said again. Classmates did that? Hisashi didn't have the chance to say anything else. The League managed to escape through a warp gate, even though Kirigiri hadn't moved since the start of the whole mess. And then it was just All Might and the unknown villain. Apparently both of them had been holding back. They leveled 2 more blocks, even taking to the air at one point and nearly sending the helicopter into a crash. Izuku's claws dug in the couch cushions. It had been a long time since All Might had struggled against anyone. Usually when he fought, his victories was a guaranteed. This time Izuku wasn't so sure. All Might was slowing down and the villain wasn't. As the fight wore on, All Might seemed to shrink. Oh no, Hisashi said. He's out of power. What? Hitoshi asked. Izuku demanded to know the same thing, but his sharp meows didn't have the same effect. They got their answer soon enough, when the All Might, struggling to stand on the screen, downed in its own hero costume. His face was gaunt, practically a walking skeleton. And the villain hovered in the air, still going strong. Hisashi's fingers grabbed onto Izuku's paw, and Hitoshi's hand. Izuku's tail twitched, too much nervous energy flowing through him. He was running numbers in his head, calculating how long All Might had been a hero, the average age of retirement in the industry, All Might's dwindling appearance over the years, the statistics of heroes who didn't retire on their own free will. No one suggested turning the TV off, even though it was obvious what they were about to witness at this point. A few other pros finally arrived. Izuku wished they could make out what everyone was saying, but the cameras were too far to pick up audio. They only caught the garbled tones of yelling, nothing specific. The heroes managed to give All Might time to gather up, The last of his power, though. His right arm inflated to the normal size, and he put everything he had into one final attack. The villain didn't get up again. Did he win? Hitoshi asked. They didn't dare answer the question yet. Not until the police arrived on the scene and loaded the villain into the high-security car. Not until a daring reporter got close enough to All Might to ask for a quick statement, and All Might pointed at the camera and said, "You're next." Ooh, okay. 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 So I've been thinking, like, this whole time when I was reading that Kimi no thingy that happened, right? And as it, his power went down, I was like, oh shit, wait, hold up. Did he ever give the quirk to anybody else? And if not, is the quirk ending here with him? And I was so worried about that, right? Because, like, it never mentioned him giving it to anybody else. At least not any of the other, 1A students, right? And I was wondering, was it given to somebody else? And I maybe think that maybe it was given to Mirio. Was it given to Mirio? The next chapter is called The Rest of Summer. Things wind down from the summer camp, while simultaneously winding up for the license exam. Which is really interesting. That one's probably going to be that one's going to be cut up into 2 chapters. So we're going back to the regular 2 chapters instead of the 3 chapters here. But that was super interesting. Okay. I'm here for it. I'm here, and I'm queer. Sorry, I have to stop. I have a lot of nervous energy. I still have a headache, believe it or not. It's actually more of an annoying back thingy. So it's not like a headache where it starts to then pound towards the end of the day till I have to, beg myself to sleep. But it's like just a weird pressure. And it's not like full pressure. It's just in the eyebrow area and it's just there. And it's really weird. But I could mostly ignore it if I'm being honest. And Yeah. I do not know what's causing it because it's definitely not the cat piss because I already cleaned that shit up. And it's not lack of eating because I've ate. It's not lack of water because I've drank water. It's not lack of sleep because for once I actually have a sleeping schedule. I do not know why it is, here. Sometimes I just get headaches for no reason sometimes. It could be stress. I mean, I am going through a slight depression. Woo, depression! I need to stop. Believe it or not, I'm like heavily depressed right now. Yee. It's not to the point where like you need to concern yourselves. It's just a slight depression. I like to call it am I really depressed? Depression? If I sit down and actually think about it and I'm not distracting myself with something else, I start to have an existential crisis. But as long as I have something occupying my mind and time, I don't have so I've been reading fan fictions, cleaning, and recording videos, and writing a lot, actually. So, very productive, because it's making me do shit. Because if I don't do shit, I start to want to cry. Maybe it's not depression. I don't know what it is. I don't have a good mental health, clearly. But, this was super cool. I am interested. Are we gonna find out who has it? Because obviously not everyone gets it. Oh, fuck. Okay. Because I have multiple stories and obviously in some stories somebody else gets it and stuff like that. Like in Fluffy Mind, I think I have it tagged. If I don't, I'm sorry, spoiler alert. But I don't know if I have it tagged. Do I have it tagged? I should probably check before I say. Hold up. Do I have it tagged? Let me check. I'm opening up. Works. Going down. Fluffy Mind, here it is. Izuku Midoriya has a... Okay, so first is Fluff, Angst, her comfort. Izuku has a quirk. Izuku does not have one for all quirk. Izuku has a cat quirk. Dead Inko, found family. Parental Midnight. Parental Ingenium. Midnight adopts Izuku. Ingenium adopts Izuku. Parental Shouta Aizawa. Parental Yamada. Shouta adopts Hitoshi. Hisashi adopts Hitoshi. OCs play an important part in the story. OC insert. Shinso Hitoshi replaces Minoru Mineta. Slow Bird, Quirk discrimination, Kidnapping, Angst with happy ending. Beta readers. Beta Red, looks like Sir Nighteye gets to live. Here it is. Shinso Itoshi has one for all quirk. There it is. So yeah, I do have a tag. But yeah, in that one, Shinso gets the quirk. And it acts differently. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, I don't need to do it in the line. Same with headlock. Although there is still quirk, so I still need to do it with headlock, but I don't need it to have so present. Headlock, and then for my kingdom, it doesn't have it. Silent Hearts is also another one that needs to be touched upon. Helios is definitely one that needs to be touched upon, so put 2 on those. And that one too. Why did I give it a French name? I'm gonna kill myself. No, I'm not! I'm not. But why did I give it a French name? Me Mirror Enemy. Ma Minor and give me a second. Give me a second. The only way I could I need to give me a second. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. Un minuto. Ma Mreya Enemy. Ma Mreya Enemy. I was saying it somewhat incorrectly, but that's beside the point. Mahmeya Enemy. I also need to do it on that one. But I always find it interesting when it's a different person who gets all for one. All for one? No, one for all. Is it? Yeah, one for all. There you go. So, yeah. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.